We've got the anniversary of two major 20th century events coming up, D-Day and Tiananmen Square. And I think we need to ask, are we at risk of losing the lessons of the 20th century? Are we forgetting them? Every new generation, so the saying goes, needs to be told these stories and needs to be learned these lessons. But to what degree are we slipping behind? And in the past year or so, there's been a number of media reports and stories and conversations about statistics on Holocaust information and to what degree people are educated on the Holocaust. And reports that made their way all up to the New York Times found that Canadians, and particularly Canadian millennials, are quite ignorant about a whole lot of the Holocaust. And something like 75% of Canadians can't name a single concentration camp, even though Auschwitz is something that one would have thought was well known, that anybody could summon that phrase, many movies, many books, that it had been a wide part of popular culture. But I guess this day and age, with new young people coming into the fore, coming into adulthood, if they're not being learned it robustly in school, they're just not learning it at all. So we're looking at the 75th anniversary of D-Day this week and the 30th anniversary of the massacre at Tiananmen Square. Two very similar but very different lessons, of course. The D-Day one about fighting the Nazis, about fighting that totalitarian regime, and why a lot of Canadians, a lot of our ancestors put their lives on the line, many dying for our freedoms and our liberties, something we forget when we're so readily able to give up the fight this day and age to say, who cares? We don't have to worry about fighting for this freedom or that freedom. And fewer Canadians remain who fought in World War II. I mean, anyone who's been going to Remembrance Day for many years, you still respect it, you still honor it, but you kind of get used to it. But perhaps what you don't realize is that there are fewer people who are physically present at those services who were back there back in the day. And as their numbers recede, does our memory of it recede? Do the number of people who appreciate the importance of the event, does that diminish? Now, Tiananmen Square is much closer to us, of course, than World War II was just in 1989. But there's already a lot of fascinating stuff to read out there right now about how the communists in Beijing, not just censoring conversation about Tiananmen Square back then when it happened, but censoring it now. One popular musician, a pop rock star in China, who isn't really all that political, had a couple songs come out that alluded to Tiananmen Square. His tours have now been canceled, his social media has gone dead, and he has vanished. They are disappearing people for fear that they are going to talk about Tiananmen Square. So this all shows us it's an urgent matter, it's a pressing matter, and it's a very real matter. Because if we let these stories slip away from our fingers, if we let these stories just disappear, if we let China clamp down on the fact that Tiananmen Square massacre was a real thing, it happened, and there was a time when people in China were putting their lives on the line for democracy and freedom, well, if we let that happen, then we have failed to learn the lessons that people decades ago died for.